The Battle of Midway, fought from June 4 to 7, 1942, stands as a pivotal moment in the Pacific theater of World War II, a clash that would forever alter the trajectory of the war and cement the aircraft carrier's status as the ultimate game-changer in naval warfare. In the 6 months preceding the battle, the Imperial Japanese Navy had been on a relentless march across the Pacific, seizing key territories and expanding its empire with lightning speed, its naval forces having already sunk or captured nearly a third of the U.S. Pacific Fleet's battleships. With a vast and sprawling empire to defend, the United States was desperately scrambling to stem the tide of Japanese expansion, its military leaders well aware that the loss of Midway Island would grant the enemy a strategic foothold within striking distance of the Hawaiian Islands, effectively rendering the U.S.'s Pacific stronghold untenable. As the Japanese Combined Fleet, led by Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, began to mass its forces for a decisive strike against Midway, the stage was set for a confrontation that would decide the fate of the Pacific, and with it, the course of the war. As the Japanese Combined Fleet closed in on Midway, the United States Navy found itself facing a daunting problem, a crippling intelligence gap that left its commanders scrambling to anticipate the enemy's next move. With Japanese naval codes proving increasingly difficult to crack, American cryptanalysts were working around the clock to glean vital information from intercepted transmissions, but the process was painstakingly slow, and the enemy's intentions remained shrouded in mystery. Meanwhile, the Japanese Navy's use of secure communication channels and encoded messages had created an impenetrable veil of secrecy, allowing Admiral Yamamoto to coordinate his forces with precision, while the U.S. Navy's own plans for defense were being hastily cobbled together with limited knowledge of the enemy's dispositions. As a result, American commanders were forced to rely on educated guesswork and intuition, rather than concrete intelligence, to prepare for the impending battle, leaving the U.S. Pacific Fleet vulnerable to a potentially devastating surprise attack. The intelligence shortfall would prove a major headache for American commanders, as they struggled to make sense of fragmentary reports and incomplete information, their decisions influenced by a combination of deduction, experience, and raw instinct. The Japanese naval forces, under the command of Admiral Yamamoto, were utilizing a complex system of communication codes and ciphers, including the infamous JN-25 code, which had been in use since 1939. This code employed a combination of numerical and alphabetical substitutions, making it extremely difficult for American cryptanalysts to decipher. Furthermore, the Japanese had implemented a layered system of communication, with multiple levels of encryption and authentication, ensuring that even if one level was compromised, the others would remain secure. The use of additives, or prearranged numerical values, was also employed to further complicate the decryption process. Meanwhile, American cryptanalysts were relying on traffic analysis, direction-finding techniques, and partial decryption of lower-level codes to piece together a fragmented picture of Japanese naval movements and intentions. This painstaking process involved analyzing patterns of communication, identifying key transmission nodes, and using probability and deduction to fill in the gaps, all in an effort to stay one step ahead of the enemy. As the Japanese naval forces closed in on Midway, the Americans' painstaking efforts in cryptanalysis began to bear fruit. On May 20, 1942, American cryptanalysts successfully decrypted a crucial message referencing a Japanese naval operation, codenamed MI, which was revealed to be a plan to capture the strategic Midway atoll. This breakthrough was made possible by the efforts of Commander Joseph Rockefort and his team at Station HYPO, who had been working tirelessly to crack the JN-25 code. By applying their knowledge of Japanese communication protocols and using traffic analysis to identify key transmission nodes, they were able to pinpoint the location of the Japanese naval forces and anticipate their intentions. This intelligence was then passed on to Admiral Nimitz, who used it to inform his decision to prepare a defensive posture around Midway, setting the stage for a decisive confrontation with the Japanese naval forces. The Americans' ability to stay one step ahead of the enemy was a direct result of their investment in cryptanalysis, which proved to be a crucial factor in the outcome of the battle. Analyzing the events leading up to the Battle of Midway, it becomes clear that the American success was not solely due to their code-breaking abilities, but also the effective integration of this intelligence into their strategic planning. The information gleaned from the decrypted JN-25 messages allowed Admiral Nimitz to make informed decisions about the deployment of his limited naval resources. By positioning his aircraft carriers, the USS Enterprise, USS Yorktown, and USS Hornet, northeast of Midway, Nimitz was able to create a defensive posture that would allow him to capitalize on any Japanese mistakes. Furthermore, the Americans' use of radar technology, particularly the new CXAM radar system installed on the USS Yorktown, enabled them to detect incoming Japanese aircraft at a range of over 100 miles, providing crucial minutes for their pilots to scramble and prepare for battle. The combination of cryptanalysis, strategic planning, and technological advancements gave the Americans a significant advantage in the battle to come, allowing them to stay one step ahead of the Japanese naval forces. In contrast to the Americans' effective integration of intelligence and technology, the Japanese naval forces were hindered by their own rigid command structure and inadequate communications. While Admiral Yamamoto's plan to capture Midway and draw out the American Pacific Fleet was ambitious, its complexity and the lack of coordination between the various Japanese task forces ultimately proved to be its downfall. The Japanese reliance on radio silence, intended to maintain the element of surprise, actually hindered their ability to adapt to changing circumstances, leaving them vulnerable to the American counterattack. Furthermore, the Japanese aircraft carriers, although highly maneuverable and well-armored, were not equipped with the same level of radar technology as their American counterparts, limiting their ability to detect and respond to incoming threats. This disparity in technological capabilities, combined with the Americans' superior intelligence and strategic planning, would ultimately prove decisive in the battle, as the Japanese naval forces struggled to respond to the unexpected American counterattack. The Americans' ability to stay one step ahead of the Japanese, leveraging their technological and intelligence advantages, would set the stage for a pivotal turning point in the war. The implications of the Battle of Midway were far-reaching, as the decisive American victory thwarted Japanese expansionist ambitions and halted the momentum of their relentless march across the Pacific. The loss of 4 Japanese aircraft carriers, each representing a significant investment of resources and manpower, severely crippled the Imperial Japanese Navy's ability to project power and coordinate large-scale operations. Furthermore, the death of hundreds of highly trained and experienced Japanese aviators, who could not be easily replaced, dealt a devastating blow to the Japanese naval air arm, eroding their qualitative edge over their American counterparts. Meanwhile, the United States, having stemmed the tide of Japanese aggression, could now shift its focus towards a more proactive strategy, gradually transitioning from a defensive posture to a series of amphibious assaults that would ultimately bring the war to the Japanese homeland. As the strategic initiative began to shift, the Allies gained a crucial window of opportunity to seize the initiative and dictate the terms of the conflict. As the Allies capitalized on the momentum gained at Midway, a new era of strategic maneuvering and calculated risk-taking unfolded, marked by a series of grueling island-hopping campaigns and relentless air and naval bombardments that would slowly but inexorably erode the Japanese defensive perimeter. The United States, now buoyed by the confidence of its triumph at Midway, leveraged its industrial might and logistical prowess to fuel a war of attrition that would ultimately exhaust the Japanese war machine, exposing the vulnerability of its overextended supply lines and the fragility of its besieged garrisons. In the crucible of this unforgiving conflict, the combatants would test the limits of their tactical ingenuity, their technological prowess, and their strategic foresight, setting the stage for the climactic confrontation that would